welcome to a Papa G deep dive. Every year, Easter arrives with a strange combination of traditions. Church services at sunrise, families gathered around a meal, children hunt for brightly colored eggs, and somewhere in the middle of it all, a rabbit. Now, that combination alone is enough to raise an historical eyebrow, because the original Easter story doesn't involve rabbits or eggs or spring festivals. It begins with an execution. Hi, I'm Papa G. After many years in the history classroom, I've learned that some of the most familiar holidays have the most layered stories. And Easter may be the most layered of all. To understand it, we have to go back to the 1st century in a Roman province called Judea. Jesus of Nazareth had been traveling, teaching, and gathering followers. His message focused on the kingdom of God, forgiveness, and a radically different version of power. One built not on force, but on sacrificial love. That message drew attention. Some of it positive, some of it dangerous. By the time of the Jewish festival of Passover, tensions were high. Passover itself was already a deeply symbolic moment, a remembrance of Israel's deliverance from slavery in Egypt. So the city of Jerusalem was crowded, expectant, and watched carefully by Roman authorities. Within a matter of days, Jesus was arrested, tried, and executed by crucifixion, a Roman method designed not just to kill, but to send a message. Crucifixion was public, painful, and unmistakably final. For his followers, it looked like the end of everything. But very early on the first day of the week, something unexpected happened. The Gospels record that the tomb where Jesus had been placed was found empty. And shortly after, his followers began to claim something even more startling. They'd seen him alive. Now, whatever one believes about those events, historians agree on something important. The early Christian movement was built on a very specific claim. Not just that Jesus had taught something meaningful, but that something had happened. That claim, the resurrection, became the center of what would eventually be called Easter. But the holiday itself didn't appear overnight. In the earliest centuries, Christians didn't celebrate Easter the way we think of it today. They gathered weekly. They told the story. They remembered. But over time, as Christianity spread across the Roman world, communities began to develop an annual celebration of the resurrection. And that led to one of the most interesting historical debates. When should it be celebrated? Some Christians wanted to link it directly to Passover, since that was the timing of the original events. Others wanted to celebrate it on a Sunday, the day associated with the resurrection. The disagreement eventually became significant enough that church leaders addressed it formally. The result was a system that still shapes Easter today. Easter would be celebrated on the first Sunday after the first full moon following the spring equinox, which explains why Easter seems to move around on the calendar every year. Now, as Christianity spread into Europe, something else began to happen. Local cultures had their own ways of marking the arrival of spring. After long winters, spring meant life returning, light increasing, food becoming available again. So over time, some of those seasonal symbols became associated with Easter. Eggs, for example, were a natural symbol of new life. And in some traditions, they were forbidden during the fasting season leading up to Easter. So when the feast arrived, eggs became part of the celebration. As for the rabbit, that likely comes from later European folklore, where animals associated with fertility and spring were woven into local customs. And over generations, 3 customs blended with the Christian celebration, which is how we ended up with a holiday that includes both ancient theology and seasonal tradition. But underneath all those layers, the core of Easter has remained remarkably consistent. It is centered on a claim that death is not the final word. Now, historians approach that claim in different ways. Some analyze the sources, some examine the rapid growth of early Christianity, some focus on how belief in the resurrection shaped communities and behavior. But regardless of perspective, the historical impact is clear. The Easter story helped shape one of the world's largest religious movements, the moral imagination of entire cultures, and the rhythms of the calendar we still live by today. And like many things in history, it carries a certain irony. An event that began with a public execution by an empire became the foundation of a message that would outlast that empire. And that may be one of the patterns history shows us again and again. Power doesn't always look the way we expect it to. Sometimes it arrives quietly. Sometimes it looks like defeat. and only later does it begin to reshape the world around it. And that makes Easter not just a holiday, but one of the most enduring stories in human history.